Yeah, let's dig into, you alluded to this earlier. When you came to Spirit, they were already a low cost carrier, but I think the perception was that it came at the expense of the experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was the old, it was a 60 Minutes that I saw, and it was this old sort of maybe even urban legend that there was, no suggestion box or customer complaints went unread in a big pile, and these kinds of myths. But that was the public perception. I would
Mm-hmm.
love to hear, what your, and I know you came to Spirit. You weren't immediately the CEO. That happened, I think, January of 19, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
sure you were a part of the executive team there and the
Mm-hmm.
that took place from. I would just love to hear the inside initiative to change that public perception to where the consumer could have both, right? They could have that low cost option and actually have, the positive customer service experience, not necessarily with frills, but you know,
Right.
you get on the airplane and you want to buy food and drink and you can do that. But I would just love to hear that experience and just how you change that perception, even the mentality of the people working within the company, eliminating any types of preconceived sort of disposition to, defeatist, mentality where I'm sure it's probably difficult if you're, for your gate agents and your customer facing employees to be dealing with that perception that's thrust upon them, even if they are delivering that superior product.
Yeah, all you're hitting on all the right points, and I'll do my best to summarize. You feel free to pop in,
Yeah.
but it is quite a fascinating case study. And it was part of what I was witnessing when I was looking at what Spirit might be. Everyone who works at Spirit always wanted us to be the best airline in the world. That's never not been true. And that I think that's an important point. The people here are proud of their business. They're proud of what we do. I'll start by telling a little story, if that's okay, about my first 3 months on the job. And I was aware of the reputation that Spirit had garnered as of that point when I took the opportunity. But I knew that the economics of the business, when coupled with an exercise in quality, could produce a value proposition for the consumer that was unprecedented. So we had work to do, and that's fine. You don't come to a job to babysit it, right? You come because you think you can do something. So I was on the job for about 3 months, and we got to take our first leisure trip as a family. And we were going back to Arizona, where my wife and I both have our parents. And Spirit has a connecting flight over Dallas. And it's the same flight today. We still have that same kind of Fort Lauderdale, Dallas, Phoenix connection. So we were boarding the airplane here in Fort Lauderdale, and I was, I had the girls, and they were younger then. You've met my girls, and they're older now, but they were younger then, and so they were wearing their princess backpacks and their pink outfits or whatever. We were boarding the airplane, and there was an elderly couple behind us, and they were interacting with my daughters, how cute you guys are, and that sort of thing. And they turn around and say, "My daddy works for this airline," right? So when you're at that time, I didn't know
it's going either way.
Right. You don't know, right? And I'm not ashamed of my company, but I know that we had a reputation, right? And I turned and introduced myself. How do you do? I'm Ted Christie. I'm the CFO here at Spirit. It's very nice to meet you. Thank you for being with us today, that kind of thing. And these folks said to me, I want you to know that, and they were in their late 60s, and they said, our whole life, we live in Dallas, by the way, our whole life, we wanted to do nothing other than get to the Caribbean. We live a modest life. It's been a lifelong dream for us to explore it. And we've never been able to think about it or afford it until Spirit started serving Dallas. And we were able to finally build a vacation in our retirement around this. And it's been extremely meaningful for the two of us. And I wanted to say thank you.
Wow.
So that was my first, what we call our guest interaction. And I was like, I knew it. This is what I'm talking about, right? As long as we can do it well, we can have a demonstrable impact on the traveling. We can basically create what is a luxury good, which is the idea, the aspirational good of travel, right? It's got that kind of like unspoken value, and you can deliver that to a broader audience. That's going to have that's a powerful brand, right? So getting to the point is, I was aware that we had our missteps. We had cheeky advertising that was out there that was like intended to kind of bring eyeballs to the site. You were around in Florida at the time. You may have seen some of that stuff. Our operational execution was less than stellar, so we were often late. And we canceled too many flights. And there's reasons for that. We were trying to carve out our space. We were trying to create a business. We were trying to prove to the market that the low-cost model could work. And so we had to focus on certain things at certain times. It's just about evolution. And so once it became clear that we actually had a business that would work, then you could turn your attention to all the things that you wanted to do to improve it. So around 2015, we started to make real strides in improving the operational execution of the business, which we knew would be the next value the next side of the value proposition. So you can deliver low fares, great. But if you can deliver low fares and be reliable, and you have the newest fleet in the industry, and your airplanes are clean and your staff is friendly, if you couple all that, despite the fact that we offer a model that is a la carte, like you said, we charge separately for items, but all of that's intended to reduce the fare. And the data that we produce and the government requires us to produce on their behalf, and then they consolidate it, validates that while we do charge separately for bags and seat assignment and, like you said, food on board, our fare has gone down by almost the same amount over that period of time. So the collective amount that you pay is still lower than it was before. And we've been able to do that through efficiency and productivity. So we thought, okay, we can deliver low fares, but if we can do it with all this other stuff, now we got a brand. Right now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah,
and
sure.
So beginning around 2015, 2016, we started to really invest in the tools to make the operation hum. And so we went from routine basement dweller in on-time performance, what we call completion factor, which is how frequently you cancel flights, the amount of complaints that we receive through the DOT, that's measured by the Department of Transportation, and then they report that as well. Yeah, right. And then the last is mishandled bag performance. How often do you lose your checked baggage? All those things, we were routinely, bottom dwellers. And we started to chip away at that and move ourselves up the ranking. Last year, out of the 10 reporting airlines, we were number 4 in on-time performance. We were number 4 in completion factor, and we were in the top 3 in bag performance. And all of that translated into a much improved 70% reduction in complaint ratio filed by the DOT. Wow. And then this year, despite the pandemic, through the end of last month, which is the last reportable month, we were number 2 in on-time performance of the 10 reporting carriers, number 1 in completion factor. And our bag performance has been cut in half, meaning we've lost half as many bags as we lost last year. So the way we measure guest satisfaction, either through the number of complaints we receive at the DOT or our own measure of, you're probably familiar with the statistic called Net Promoter Score, which is you're surveying customers of yours, and you give them a question, and the question is usually, would you recommend XYZ product to your family or friends? Mm-hmm. And then you give them a 10 box. 10 is most likely to agree, 1 is least likely to agree. That's a very sophisticated human behavioral modeling question, and you can learn a lot about how human behavior just from that one question. So it delivers a score, which is a Net Promoter Score, meaning are you creating brand value? Our Net Promoter Score is up, tenfold in 3 years. So now we're starting. Not only have we got a model that works, people like low fares, not surprisingly. But if you can deliver that with all those other things, you can deliver a brand value that people like, and they start to attach themselves to that brand, and they start to form allegiance with that brand, and they start to get loyalty with that brand, and they become promoters of that brand in social media and with their friends and that kind of thing. And that's the tailwind that we're only starting to see. We still have the hangover of, of the past that we have to diffuse. But what we're now trying to convince people is, I know you may have had a bad experience on us 5 years ago, and it's been 5 years since you tried it. You got to try us now. It's a completely different airline. And so it's actually it's a lot of fun.